I would really request that all of us keep our videos off, just to enable those with low bandwidth to be able to listen in to the panelists. Panelists, keep your videos on so that the audience can connect more with you. And we shall have a Q&A session after the discussions. Please feel free to send your questions through the chat buttons below, or you can directly send them to me and I'll pass them to the moderator. Keep your mics off, please. Thank you. And please can improve for our next webinars. We'll introduce all our panelists tonight. And don't know Mike Davis. Mike Davis is the president of the American Chamber of Commerce. He is also the COO of Veritas Investment. And Mike is going to moderate this session tonight. Mike, please, over to you.
Thank you very much, Anne. As Anne mentioned, health and safety is extraordinarily important in the work environment, especially with the continued growth of international organizations coming to Uganda. One of the key things I was looking at today is approximately every day globally, 1,000 people die from health and safety issues at the workplace. 860,000 people sustain some sort of injury in the workplace. And that's—
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Hello? Yeah?
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Hold on. There you go. All right. So going back to that. All right, sorry about that. So going back to that, it's a serious issue here, especially in Uganda. As we all know, the health and safety appears to not be taken very seriously within Uganda. And what happens is, I was looking at it, in Uganda we have 7 different laws that govern health and safety. Everything from the Factories Act to Health and Safety Act to a Workers Act.
Oh my God.
Hold on. All right, so I was reading a professional article yesterday, and it details a study of construction workers in Uganda. And what happened is that in the study, 32.4% of all participants had been injured on the job site in Uganda, in Kampala. 70% of those were at the night shift, and they attributed this to mostly low daily income, people under the age of 24, a poor safety environment, extreme job stress, job dissatisfaction, poor PPE, personal protective equipment and provisioning, and poor use of PPE. All of these causes can be mitigated, but it's very clear that in Uganda, from this study, it's not being handled very properly. I come from an environment where health and safety is paramount. Even being a 16-year-old employee at a grocery store, we were taught health and safety rules before we could even start the job. I remember watching videos of it. It was required. I think that's a good standard to set and go forward with here in Uganda. So I'd like to introduce our panel now, and kind of give you let them tell you a little bit about themselves. Herbert Muhindo, he is the QHSE manager for PPE Centre. We work closely together on a few things. Herbert, do you want to say a few things about yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mike. As you has already introduced me as Muhindo Herbert, Quality Health, Safety and Environment Consultant for PPE Centre. I did my background education is about I did a bachelor's degree in environmental management technology from Chambogo University, and then from there I did a NIBOSH course certificate in occupational health and safety. And I've also done TOT, train of the trainees online course. And I've also done another online course about how to prevent a spread of COVID-19 in workplaces. So basically, my background is that, and that is, I think that's all I have. Mike, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Herbert. Next up, Abeir Elbashir, sorry. She is the general manager, the country director of Meridian Engineering Construction Company, which is an oil and gas company operating here in Uganda as well as Ghana. She's formerly the general manager of Simba Oil here in Uganda. Abeir, would you like to say anything?
Hi, hello everyone, good evening. I'm called Abeir Elbashir, and I'm the country director of Meridian Engineering and Construction company in Uganda. Our headquarters in Ghana, and we just established a new office in Uganda. We are preparing ourselves for oil and gas. Mainly we are doing oil and gas EPC projects, and I'm an electrical engineer, but been working in oil and gas sector for 18 years. Thank you, Mike.
Great, thank you. And finally, we have Joseph YIGA from the Ministry of Labor. Joseph, are you there? Joseph, we can't hear you.
Joseph YIGA, Flavian. I'm an occupational safety and health inspector in the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development in the Department of Occupational Safety and Health. I hold a bachelor's degree in industrial chemistry. I have a postgraduate diploma in education, a postgraduate diploma in human resource management, a diploma in occupational safety and health. I also have a NIBOSH certificate. I'm currently a senior safety inspector in the ministry. I think that's what I can say as for now.
Great, thank you very much, Joseph. Well, I think I wanted to start out, one of the key issues in Uganda is well, where do we stand? What's the status of the industry and the status of health and safety in the Ugandan workplaces? Joseph, would you mind giving us your thoughts on that?
Come again?
What is the state of health and safety in Ugandan workplaces? Do employers know about it? Do employees know about it?
Mike and colleagues, the status of occupational safety and health in Uganda, I would say, is not good. We have a poor occupational safety and health culture. And those of us who are inspectors, when we go to workplaces, at times we are not happy with what we find there. Many of the employers, much as many may be knowing something about occupational safety and health, but there is a lot of gray areas that are not covered under occupational safety and health. Much as in Uganda, the legal framework exists as far back as 1964. There was a registration by the British Protectorate, and then 1964, it was adopted with some minor modifications to become the Factories Act. And this one has been there up to 2000. However, after 2000, it was realized that it was no longer in consonance with the prevailing times. And then efforts were made to put in place a legislation that is in conformity with the current economic times. And as we talk now, we have the Occupational Safety and Health Act. Now, this act is rooted in the Constitution of Uganda of Article 39, which says that every Ugandan has a right to a clean and a healthy environment. Now, the law that is in place is a very good law. And of course, it doesn't work alone. There are other pieces of laws that are legislation that are in place. Mike, you talked about a number of them. We have the Employment Act, the Workers' Compensation Act. We have the Labor Disputes and Arbitration Settlement Act. We have the National Social Security Fund Act, the Pension Act. All these are, and others, the National Environment Act. So as far as the legislation is concerned, we are doing okay. The Occupational Safety and Health lays down the legal requirements that which have to be followed at the workplace. And it places specific responsibilities on the different parties in the workplace: the employer, the employee, the public, the government. And it is being administered by the department where I work, that is the Occupational Safety and Health Department, in the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. This law is a good piece of legislation. So it has it prescribes the basic minimum requirements for safety and health at work. But much as it is prescribed the basic, you'll be amazed that these basics are not anywhere met by many of the workplaces. However, there are quite a number of workplaces which are doing well, and we commend them. But in a nutshell, I can say we are struggling. We are trying to see that we have a good occupational safety and health culture in our country as of now. I don't know whether I can say more, but I'm looking at time.
All right, thank you, Joseph. I think that's actually one of the themes that we've discovered over the past year, 2 years of doing this, is that the laws are very good. Implementation is absolutely poor. And it's not a fault of yours or the ministry. It's just a systemic issue. Herbert, what do you think? I mean, what do you think? You're on the ground on a day-to-day basis in these companies. How does it work on the ground for you? What do you think?
I would say the state of health and safety in Uganda workplaces is still lacking because of two major reasons. The first reason being the lack of knowledge about occupational health and safety. Many employers have no idea at all. They have no idea of the existence of the guidelines and regulations that have been set to ensure occupational safety in their workplaces. That is one of the basic reasons why safety in Uganda in our workplaces is not having a good culture. Secondly, I would say many of the employers in Uganda that have the knowledge have been polluted with the ideology that occupational safety is not profitable. And training of staff in regards to occupational health and safety is a waste of working hours. This reason actually also has given sure that our safety culture in Uganda is a very good. We use the cheapest and these occupational health and safety requirements and regulations. So this actually gives a very big gap to the employees and exposing them to many risks. And on the side of the employees also, the lack of trainings it gives them a lot of it gives them like an opportunity of being unexposed to the regulations and policies that the government has put in place. So obviously, this one gives the fact that there is an existence of a regulation that protects them from the workplace, but they don't know, the employees have no idea about these regulations because they lack a lot of training. They have actually, nobody has come out and talked to them about occupational health and safety. But they also do not know how the safety executes their jobs. So the employees, they also have no idea that when I go to work, I am protected. The regulation is there to protect me. They take everything for granted because nobody has come out to speak about it. So it is unfortunate that these days in many of the workplaces I go to visit, it is very unfortunate that occupational health and safety is seen to be profitable after an incident or an accident has occurred, which is very, very expensive than implementing occupational health and safety in our businesses. So basically, I would say those two reasons are the main reasons making occupational health and safety in Uganda lag behind. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Herbert. You know, in America, occupational health and safety is seen as profitable for the employee because if you turn in your employer the rewards to turn in your employer for not adhering to standards, and the employee usually benefits monetarily from that. I think that's one thing that could really change the game here. Abeir, you know, you've worked internationally and as well as Uganda. I mean, how does it compare from your experience so far?
The gap is really big. I mean, in terms of government regulation, as Joseph mentioned, that the OSH Act 2006 took a place, but the problem is in public sector and as well as private sector, they don't follow strictly the rules. Internationally, I mean, it's like a, you know, like Quran or Bibles. I mean, strictly means strictly, otherwise you're fired. I just want to give a simple example. I mean, for example, the seat belt of the vehicle that you are in, if it's not 3-point seat belt, unless if you are in an airplane or train, then you're fired. If you use a seat belt in a car, like in the middle seat of the rear seats of 5-seater car, if you sit there, then you're fired, simply. So it's strictly, you have to follow all the rules, policies, guidelines, procedures of HSE. I'm not an HSE. I've never worked as an HSE officer or supervisors, but as I told you, in oil and gas, everyone is accountable, and everyone has to know the policies, procedures, everything regarding the HSE and QHSE by heart. So in Uganda, I mean, I've been in a project, but they don't take it seriously. I don't blame the employer or employees or even the suppliers of PPE, but it seems that there is a big gap and they don't take it seriously. HSE officers should be the first person you hire before you dig on floor. Even if you are electrification company, civil contractors, EPC, etc. Here, some companies, they're working without the presence of the HSE. Some of them is freelancing them. How can you freelance an HSE officer? I mean, it's impossible. HSE officer has to do the toolbox meeting for reminding and keep reminding and updating of the work conditions of the site every day. And it's not happening here. That's my point of view.
No, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, I was chatting with a friend of mine today, and he jokingly said, I told him about this this session, and he told me, well, I'm the CEO, the HSE staffer, and the HR person. And
you see,
it's normal.
No, in oil and gas, even if he's HR or even he's MD or manager or CEO, at least he should get an IOSH. Not necessarily, of course, maybe Herbert and Joseph will correct me because both of you are neighbors certified. So in other level of management, they at least should be IOSH or OSHA, not necessarily to be NABOSH, but everyone has to be certified. And when they hire you in oil and gas, first thing that they will do, they will give you a course of basics of HSE, you know, first aid, firefighting, and etc. Kind of courses.
Agreed.
That's the alphabetic.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys. You know, obviously government regulations appear to be in place for QHSE. I mean, I don't think that's debated, but policy implementation has not reached the day-to-day employee. What opportunities exist for private sector to partner with the government on implementation of policy and regulatory structures? I mean, how can the private sector help this go along better? Because obviously the government has not been able to implement accordingly. And that's not saying that the government is bad at their job. It's just saying that they're probably not funding. There's not enough resources, not enough information, knowledge, and access. And it's not to blame individuals. It's more as a general discussion. Herbert, what do you think? I mean, what opportunities exist for private sector to be engaged with government? How does that work?
Thank you, Mike. First of all, I would like to actually commend the government. I thank the government of Uganda for developing and putting in place the regulations and policies that govern occupational health and safety in our workplaces. They've done a great job. The regulations are good. If you read through them, they really, really give you an insight that you're supposed to keep your workplace safe. They have an objective of saying, come from home when you're okay, go back when you're very fine. So in my opinion, in like most fields, enforcement is the hardest part of the governance, especially in this particular field, for example, the occupational health and safety field, because there are very many companies, thousands of companies that have intentionally chosen to try and against these regulations and policies. In my opinion, the starting point for such a relationship with the private sector, it would be very good. It would be good for the government. The government would take advantage of the existence of the expertise in the private sectors to build its capacity to enforce these regulations that they have put in place, these perfect regulations that they have put in place, whether it be it through audits, be it through inspections, be it through trainings. This would be very good to make sure that we strengthen the implementation of these regulations through actually partnering with the private sector. So in another way, could be to identify players in the private sector. The government could identify players in the private sector that are capable of providing companies with occupational health and safety solutions and guidance on how to follow the set regulations that have been put forward by the government, be it regulations, be it policies, be it acts, all these. The government should come up and identify different players that have expertise in occupational health and safety. And this will be a great opportunity for government to implement these regulations. So basically, I think to the companies that intend to follow the regulations but do not know how to do that, government has a very big burden. It has a very big role. It can release its burden by putting in efforts and putting on board expertise that have occupational health and safety, and so make sure that they implement these regulations. I think, Mike, that's my idea.
Okay, thank you, Herbert. Abeir, I mean, in your experience, I mean, from the international standpoint, you've worked in many countries. How have other countries done this? How have other countries engaged with the government has engaged with the private sector, like in Nigeria, Ghana, Sudan, etc.? How does that work?
I'm going to say what Herbert said, but in a different way maybe, but the same meaning. Because he was saying that the best idea of the private sector to have some kind of partnership with the government or memorandum of understanding with the government, and to start to create an event also regarding the HSE and health and safety in general. For example, they can celebrate the 28th of April, which is the safety day celebration that held globally everywhere. I'm not sure about Uganda, whether they have done this before or not, but you know, such kind of events that we are having here in Airstrip for MTN, for you know, Lato Milk, why not the HSE day on 28th of April? that can be hosted by the government or by private sectors under the Ministry of Labor, Gender and Social Development. That's one of the idea. I mean, it's not marketing here. I'm not talking about marketing, but creating an event so the awareness can happen. And you know, even some people even working in oil and gas here in Uganda, when I say I like to say HSE, I don't like to say EHS. So they told me, no, HSE is wrong word. You have to say EHS. I told them HSE, EHS, OHS, SHE, it's all the same meaning. I mean, it comes from the same word, which is HSSES. So, you know, those are the basics, and people doesn't know about it. So such kind of events and gathering that can explain and for the even normal people. I mean, I'm not talking about those oil and gas or electrification or civil contractors. No, even the normal welder who has his own workshop. He has to apply the HSE on his own normal, I mean, that small workshop. And I mean, you can see that they're working without the coverall, without any PPE, lifting weighs, everything is wrong. So such kind of event can help a lot.
Great. Well, I think that's really relevant. Just from a knowledge standpoint, I think that's come through what Herbert said, what you said, even what Joseph has said is that there's a lack of knowledge of what this is, and I think it's really important there. I mean, I think Joseph, that's something for your side to come back to within the ministry of how can you expend some resources to educate a larger populace, not just a small group of people in the oil and gas industry. I think that's really relevant. Yes, Joseph.
Thank you, Herbert. Thank you, Abeir and Mike. Yes, the ideas are good, but some of them we are implementing. I'm going to start with what Madame Abeir has talked about, the 28th April, Osh Day. In Uganda, we have been commemorating this day for the last, I think, close to 10 years. And on this day, we have been bringing together private companies, government, Federation of Uganda Employers, Uganda Manufacturers Association. We have been having even a marathon. So the situation is kind of improving. Much as, of course, we are not happy for us as inspectors, as government, but there has been a very big improvement. Originally, when I joined, going to an industry and talk about safety and health, people will not understand you. But as we talk now, there's some change. There's a change, and people, the employers, even going to inspection, accepting you would be a problem. But as we talk now, there's a change. I think a lot has been done, but of course a lot has got to be done. In terms of training, information, and enforcement. Somebody talked about private OSH practitioners. How can we partner with them? As we talk now, there is a regulation that is in this draft. It is on top with the top management. As I want to bring on private practitioners, because as Herbert said, the government is overwhelmed with the numbers. And there was, I wouldn't say a mistake that was done, but sometime back there was decentralization in all ministries. And in our ministry, the occupational safety and health function was not decentralized. Labor function was decentralized, but the occupational safety and health function, I think because of the disciplines that are involved, it was not decentralized. So it is at the center. And because of the disciplines that are involved, you cannot have these disciplines at each and every district. So it becomes very hard. We have a few core team at the center, which keeps on going to the various districts to inspect and offer technical advice. And times we are constrained by resources, we are constrained by numbers, and sincerely we need private practitioners, serious ones. We have been getting some coming to our ministries, but at times we engage them and they are not that serious. And another thing which I want also to point out is that at times we are also disappointed by some companies, some of these multinational companies. Where they come from, the occupational safety and health is taken very seriously, as Madam Alba said. But when they come here, there's some kind of double standards. Well, I think it is they cut corners, and of course, you know, occupational safety and health comes at a cost. I think they want to avoid that cost. But of course, the enforcement, as we said, is also not that good. We in the government, we need to do more of enforcement. We need to do more of training. We need to do more of, you know, sensitizing, but we cannot do it alone. The way to go is to have private practitioners. We have been trying to, have close collaboration with the Federation of Ugandan Employers. We also have collaboration with the labor unions. But I know, you know, at times these labor unions, they become political. And instead of doing their work, they go into politics. Instead of protecting our workers, you know. But at least Federation, the private, there's PSU is also doing well. But there's a lot to be done.
Agreed. Okay, well, thank you, Joseph. I mean, I agree. Everyone wants to be a politician in Uganda. I mean, per capita, Uganda has probably pretty much many more politicians than pretty much anywhere in the world, and that's kind of a scary thing. Anyway, I agree with you that private practitioners are kind of the solution to this, or not solution to everything, but it gets engaged in the private sector. It creates jobs. And allows things to be important, or allows things to be enforced per regulation. It's similar to what's been done with yellow fever vaccinations, what's been done now with COVID testing, where private organizations are allowed to test under certain guidelines and regulations with reporting structures. So I think it's very relevant, and I think there's an opportunity for that to increase business in Uganda and lessen the stress within the ministry, where the ministry becomes the policymaker, and then the private sector becomes the implementer of that policy. Kind of leading into that, one of the things that I've seen here is I have a factory myself, is equipment and supplies. You know, is there gaps that exist in terms of equipment and supplies? What types and qualities are available? I mean, are there, you know, if you look at, I mean, I simply say the masks, is a cloth mask the same as an N95? How does that work? Is there accessibility on the market of this? I mean, Joseph, what do you think? Is there, from the ministry side, do you think there's availability of supplies and equipment on the market?
Mike, I can say that the equipment is also lacking. We have not been having very serious companies bringing in PPE. The only PPE that have been kind of reliable have been coming from South Africa. And okay, there are a few that are coming from Europe, but you know, they are quite expensive. The alternative has been coming from South Africa and of course China. And in the hierarchy of controls in safety, PPE, much as it comes, personal protective equipment, much as it comes at the last resort, but it's very important in this part of the world, because you can never have zero hazards in a work environment. So we need to protect our people. And that means we need personal protective equipment that can do the job. But unfortunately, many of the PPE that is on market at times is not appropriate. Our National Bureau of Standards has tried, but there are a lot of things that come in and they are fake and they are substandard. So there is a lot of, first of all, there are very few, and the few that come in are not appropriate. So we need to, as a government, we need to do something. And again, as I said, we need private practitioners who are serious. The market is there because many times we go to inspect or people come to us when we recommend certain equipment to be used and say, where can we get them? And then you look on the market, you can't get them. You can't prescribe them, okay? And another thing that is also bringing problems here is that before you bring PPE, before this equipment, you need to do a thorough risk assessment at your workplace. But because of lack of knowledge, we don't do a thorough risk assessment. The employer doesn't do a thorough risk assessment, and they end up getting substandard PPE, and of course, wasting resources. These things which cannot do. And at the same time, of course, the workforce is not trained. They are not going to use them properly. So it is a concoction of problems. But we are trying. For us who are in this trade, we do our best. But as I said, there is what to be done.
Well, I mean, Herbert, as a private practitioner, I mean, what is your feeling on the availability of equipment and supplies here? And by that, I mean, equipment is long-lasting equipment, coveralls, gumboots, gloves, etc., and then supplies being the consumables like sanitizer, masks, things like that. Herbert, what do you think?
Thank you, Mike. I believe that the gaps in the market when it comes to equipment and supplies of occupational safety products does not come from lack of access to these products, but the gaps come from many high specs, the way Mike has said, quality, many high specifications, the cost of the products and the quality products not being readily available. Now, I'll go back to what my colleague has just said. He has said there's a very big gap between the quality of the products that come with it, that come in the country. It is very true. So, like many other products, safety equipment and supplies have identifiable brands, names. There's some identifiable brands and names that have good quality and high specs. As the colleague has just completed and said some good specs were coming from South Africa. Here, we've seen that some good quality, South Africa is producing some good quality of PPE, though it is of high quality. And because I'll go back to the first statement I mentioned, that most of the employers don't want to spend much on occupational health and safety. They think it is not profitable. So they don't want to go for these high quality specs, long-lasting products, PPE products, for example. So they want to go for the lower quality, and little knowing that the lower quality will spend only like few months, and then it exposes the workers to these risks. And the essence of protecting the workers by using PPE actually loses meaning at the end of it all. I'll bring a good example is the 3M N95 mask, for the one we are using to control COVID-19. These N95 masks are very good quality and could be used in various industries. Even before COVID-19 pandemic happened, we used to use these masks in many of the fields, construction areas, to make sure that we mitigate dust. And if you compare an N95 and the 3-ply nose mask, and you use them in the field, truth be told, if you put on N95 and 3-ply and you go in a dusty area, The one with 3-ply will come back when he's having a lot of flu, a lot of cough difficulties in breathing, difficulties in talking, the throat is dry, compared to somebody who's putting on I95. So even before the COVID pandemic, these masks were seldom used when they were reasonably priced because the market offered cheaper products of much less quality, and more that there is a big worldwide demand of them, the price has skyrocketed. So this, however, is a huge problem because it leaves employees susceptible to injuries, and they're exposed to many risks and hazards that are supposed to be controlled by these quality PPEs. Employers that are interested in obtaining safety products of good quality, to me, according to me, can reach out to the companies that offer quality health, safety, and environment consultancy services. Reach out to these companies, ask them to do audits, ask them to do risk assessments so that they can guide you on what type of PPE you can purchase before purchasing it.
So Herbert,
is how we are going.
I sorry to interrupt. I have a question for you. You know, let's say your company requires those 3 N95s. How much do they cost? I mean, let's say they require, and we always talk about this, like, you know, you're required to have an N95. How much do they cost now in the market?
Now, apparently, you'll find a piece, because of the high demand, you'll find a piece going for around 6,000, 10,000, up to 10,000 A95 because of high demand, apparently. But before, a piece would go up to around 2,000 A95. And still, employers would not go for this because they fear spending money. And this is where we all go wrong. So we have cases, for example, me, I have cases where a client has come to me requesting products with very high specifications in regards to the work environment, and where he's assured he is not even going to have a necessity of those PPE is going to use. And I actually come out and advise him, the environment you're going in does not have all those high risks that you have to put on. You have to put on all those serious gears to make sure that you actually protect the workers. Even some light gears can work. So basically, employers have no idea on what type of PPE they really require for their workers. This is where I call upon the government could be to partner with the expertise, come in, help these small businesses, do risk assessments for them so that they can be able to buy appropriate PPE and make sure that lives of all Ugandans, of all workers working in Uganda are safe. Safety products are also tagged with CE. I have to complete this, Mike, because of time. They're also tagged with CE. They are certified. If you look at a safety product and you're working in a high risk area, you have to make sure that you know what type of certification the safety product has, so that you are sure that this is a certified product, and I am sure of either 90%, 100%. No, it cannot be 100% because PPE cannot protect you 100%. You just know that either 80% or 60% your body is safe from any exposures or injuries. So basically, Mike, I think I beg to talk, to give other chances to other panelists. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Herbert. I mean, I think that's very relevant. I mean, I know we're getting down on time here. I want to before I move on to Abeir, I want to go ahead, Abeir.
I need to comment here because against what Joseph and Herbert say, that good quality from, for example, Europe and South Africa, and bad quality from other countries. It's about standard. It's about standard. If my company is following American standard, then I will ask PPE according to ANSI. If I'm following British standard, and the manufacturer of PPE of that PPE supposed to be certified. Okay, that's one point. The second point here. You know, also I've dealt with many suppliers of PPE here in Uganda, and when you ask them about coverall, first question is like, okay, what size, what color? Hard hat, the same. What color, what size? No one is asking me for what application, what's the workplace look like, what's the project look like. And I've seen here by my own eyes on the street, some people who's working on some pipe. Let's say those people who's relating to water pipe projects and constructions, they're wearing some, you know, how to say it, electrical resistant safety shoes. And some people who's working in electrification company is wearing those rubber shoes. So it's that how we educate the workers, and that's a part of the responsibility of the supplier themselves, because they have also to show us. I mean, for us, we know exactly what to purchase by number, by serial number, by everything. But I'm talking about the unskilled labor who also need the PPE, and he's keen to get his proper PPE, but he doesn't know. I've seen also some welders here wearing a laser Google in shape, in terms of shapes. It look like welding Google, but they're wearing laser Google, and that's very dangerous. I mean, I've seen a lot of examples. I mean, time is running, but it's the responsibility of also the suppliers. And as Joseph said, in terms of quality, maybe UNBS has to have some say on this as well, because they are the one who's receiving those containers, and they are checking them. So they should know what standard that they accept inside this country, and what standard that they will reject, what kind of product that they will let it in this country, and what kind of other products that they have to reject. Thank you. I have a lot to say in this point, but there is no time.
Well, I think, I mean, this kind of leads up to a very final question for everybody. You know, according to all news reports, Andrew Muhindo, the president, across the board, we're all going to get rich because of oil and gas. Everybody's going to be rich, which obviously is not going to happen. The question is the Ugandan workplace ready for oil and gas in terms of QHSE? You know, are we ready to submit a bid to Total E&P or CNOC that says, hey, I'm going to be price-worthy. Obviously, that's what most Ugandans are thinking about. But from a health and safety standpoint, is it going to be viable? Having been on the Total E&P sites already, I know what it takes to walk onto those sites. It took me 2 days of tests. I had to go to the hospital to get my testing just to walk on the site. That didn't do any work. That's just to walk on the site. Is the Ugandan workplace ready? How are we going to get ready? I mean, I think, Abeir, you've had the most experience in oil and gas. What do you think? Are we ready? Are companies ready here? And who's going to win? And who's going to get rich? Who's not going to get rich?
Well, in terms of service companies, local service companies, they are not ready. Most of them, as I told you, they don't have certified supervisors. And I mean, time is running. FID approval will be now in December. They will start digging maybe in November, and they are not ready. They need the training. They need to certify some of their employees. Okay, well, there is some HSE officer who has an experience, but they are not certified in oil and gas. Starting from the tendering up to the kickoff meeting, before they give you the award letter, there will be a lot of discussion about HSE, and in details, by the way. And that will be the first topic always on the table for oil and gas company. It's you have to follow strictly the policies and procedures of Total and CNOC. Otherwise, you are out. They can terminate your contract if they see one or two of your employees or even your subcontractor that is not putting the proper PPE or not putting any part of the required PPE as per the contract. So you'll be out. Believe it or not, some contracts will be terminated just because of this reason. HSE.
I agree with you 100%.
So, yes.
I absolutely agree with you.
There is no joke. I told you, because of the seat belt, some people would be fired.
No, I went up with some of the guys from Total E&P up to the fields, and the car had the limiter on the vehicle. It has to go. I mean, usually I go to Hoima in like an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. It took us like almost 4 hours to get to Hoima, because you know the speed limit. That's what it is, and the guy would not go an inch faster. Joseph, I mean, what do you think? Are we ready from the government side? Are our companies ready?
Mike, as Abba said, it looks we are not ready, because I was looking through all the sectors: health, logistics and transport, the civil works, we seem to lack a lot of certified personnel in all these areas. And considering the very high occupational risks and hazards that are associated with the oil and gas, and the very high OC standards that are required therein, we still have a long way to go. However, there are some few companies that are almost there. They are trying, but those who are trying at times they are lacking capital. We have, because the capital investment that is required at times is high. So I would say that even if you look at the road conditions, I wonder whether some of these roads and bridges may be able to contain the high traffic volumes that are involved in the oil and gas industry. The health sector, are we ready to handle health emergencies that may arise? Or are we going to leave them to uplift people to neighboring countries? So there's a lot that has to be done. We are.
Yeah, well, but the question, Joseph, is FID will be signed in January.
Yes.
It's going to be signed in January, in 2 months, 2.5 months. The problem won't be solved before then.
And the problem was, because of the delays, some companies were almost, doing a lot, but because of the delays in that FID, they relaxed. Yeah. So now, from yesterday, now they are panicking.
Yeah, agreed. Well, as I said, like, there's going to be winners and losers. The winners are the ones who've kept up with this and who are going to adhere to those oil and gas standards to get Total. I mean, Total is strict. If you mess up once, you're done. And I think that's going to be the difference here. Is the ones who kept up with the standards will win all of the contracts. The one who haven't will not win any. And that's a sad state of affairs, but it's a fact of the matter, because this is a dangerous industry. It's a very dangerous industry.
So there is we risk to lose out on the local content, Cynthia.
Yep, I agree. Well, I mean, Herbert, how do people get there then? Like, I mean, you work in the industry. How can the company be ready in the next 2.5 months to apply for these bids?
All right, thank you, Mike. I think because of time, I'm going to be very fast about this. I would suggest I go straight to the point. I would suggest that any company that would like to prepare for this industry, the oil and gas industry, should invite in, for example, fresh pair of eyes and ears in their company. You invite in an external auditor from companies that are doing HSE consultancy. Bring an external auditor who is conversant with the requirements, regulations, and policies, both the local regulations and then the requirements of oil and gas, requirements of Total and requirements of CNOC, for example. So the first step is towards attaining compliance, and this is done through auditing. And how can we do this? Mike, I beg to share some slides about how we can do an audit, how I've been doing it to help businesses. For example, before the FID was delayed from being signed, what I've been doing with some other companies to help them to achieve requirements of Total and so here, what I do. I'm going to give an example. I think everybody's seeing. I've displayed something on the screen. Yeah. So I'm going to give an example of a scenario of Industry A. Industry A is an IT service company, for example, and it wants to give its services in the oil and gas industry, Total and EIP. That is, they want the requirements of Total, A&P, and then CNOC or CNOC. So what I will do, I'll first do an audit. I'll go and do an audit with them and first find out if they have all the basic requirements. When I talk about the basic requirements, that is, I'm looking at basically the initial local regulation, Occupational Health and Safety Act of Uganda. Are you maintaining it? Are you implementing it? That is what I first look at. After putting these after doing a basic audit, I go to the industry specific. Industry specific, I talk about what is the scope of work you're doing, what are the IT guys doing, and what are the regulations governing them in occupational health and safety. Every scope of work has regulations that governs it. After that, I come to the outcome specific, the total and E&P requirements, total E&P requirements, the SINOC requirements. I do an audit about that. From there, I go to the second step. I create a gap analysis from these audits. I go to the basic audit that I did, the local regulation. I give gaps to the organization and I tell them this is what you have to do in order for E&P. Then the industry specific. What is your scope? What are you supposed to do? If you are supposed to climb poles, go high. But what are you supposed to do? How are you supposed to protect yourself? You know, climbing poles is different from driving cars. So those are the gaps I have to look at and make sure that the company fills them. Then the outcome specific, I look at the total requirements in terms of the scope of work of the company that it is going to do in the area of oil and gas. Then from there, I go to the third step, which is procurement and implementation. Then I actually recommend companies according to the gaps, what we have done, we fill them up. After filling them up, we recommend equipment that they're supposed to use, equipment that is going to safeguard them, PPE, good machinery that has good guards on them, everything that is in place as recommended by Total E&P. Consumables, all that I look at it, services, consulting, I recommend that they continue consulting expertise. They continue consulting these auditors, these trainers, occupational health and safety trainers, external trainers, to come and help them to make sure that they implement these requirements of Total E&P. So the last thing I can do to help is read, audit, and review. I keep on checking with them the basic requirements, the local regulation. Are you still doing what I told you to do? Are you still doing what I recommended you to do? The industry specific, the outcome specific. And if all this is done and everything is ready, I think you're good to go. You can go and now bid for the Total E&P or SINOC jobs. Basically, that is it. Thank you,
great.
Mike. I think, yeah.
Great, thank you, Herbert. I mean, that's I think one of the key issues here is how do we, you know, a lot of people we've got to become aware of oil and gas. You know, I think this is the fourth time that Uganda is headed towards FID, and we keep saying everybody, okay, go, and then stop, and then go and stop. And as Joseph said, people just gave up. And I think that's really to detriment of what they've succeeded, because many organizations were headed towards having great HSE, and from my experience in the oil and gas industry and the international security industry, health and safety standards are absolutely the paramount. If you mess up on that, you don't get the contract, and that's one of the key things. Having been involved with that. So I think that's really relevant, Herbert, as to how to help people get up to that level to make sure that they're compliant and maintain compliance. I know I see some people in the participants, you know, I've worked with before that have run those contracts that are very, very strict. So I think it's really good. Overall, thank you guys. I mean, I think this is a great, you know, end of session question. Thank you guys for your input tonight. I really appreciate each one of you. And if there's any questions, we can feed into it from there and go. I didn't see any questions on the chat. So Anne, do you want to have any last comments?
Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you for steering this meeting so well this evening. A great thank you to our panelists.